My name is Patricia Clements, and I'm 31 years old. For 4 years, I believed I was building a solid, adult kind of love, the quiet kind, that doesn't need grand gestures to feel real. 6 months ago, I said yes when my fiancé proposed, convinced that the life we were planning together was rooted in mutual respect, shared effort, and loyalty. I was wrong about one of those things, and I didn't realize which one until the night everyone laughed. He was a dental hygienist, polished, articulate, effortlessly comfortable in social spaces. I ran my own small electrical contracting business. Nothing glamorous, but stable, honest work. I'd worked for every inch of it. We didn't live together yet. We were saving that step for after the wedding. It felt symbolic, like doing things the right way. At least the way I'd been taught to value commitment. The engagement party was his idea, organized by his friends at an upscale wine bar downtown. The kind of place where the lighting is dim on purpose and every drink costs as much as an hour of my labor. I wasn't thrilled. The venue felt pretentious, and his friends had never exactly hidden their judgment of me. They worked in marketing consulting titles that sounded important but vague enough to feel like a private club I hadn't been invited into. Still, I loved him, not them, and I told myself that was enough. About 30 people showed up that night. My friends clustered in one corner, talking sports and work, comfortable and unpolished. His friends floated around the bar, ordering rosé flights and posing for selfies. Two worlds sharing a room without really touching. It was awkward, but manageable, until the toasts. Around 9 o'clock, his best friend, the unofficial ringleader, grabbed the microphone. She'd already had several glasses of wine and wore the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in a public space. She smiled wide and said, "Okay, before our boy here gets locked down forever." She paused, waiting for the attention. "This is your last chance to escape. Marriage is basically prison with shared finances." The room exploded with laughter. Some of my friends chuckled out of discomfort. His friends howled. I turned to look at him, expecting at least a glance, a signal. Some quiet acknowledgement that this wasn't okay. Instead, he was laughing, head thrown back, eyes shining, genuinely entertained. Something tightened in my chest. The ringleader wasn't finished. "Seriously, though, are you sure you could be back on dating apps by Monday? Freedom is just one bad decision away." More laughter. He raised his glass. "Don't tempt me." The sound in the room grew louder, but inside me something went quiet. Another friend chimed in, reminding him of some pact about never settling down before 35. He shrugged dramatically and joked about breaking the rules. Someone else laughed and said maybe he was just settling. He didn't correct them, didn't defend me, didn't say my name. I sat there watching 4 years of small dismissals line up perfectly in my memory. The jokes about my job, the subtle comments about me, punching above my weight, the way he never quite pushed back when they crossed a line. I told myself it was harmless. That love happened in private, not in rooms like this. But watching him laugh at the idea of escaping me in front of everyone we knew, I finally understood what that silence had cost me. I stood up. The room fell still. "You know what I said?" calmly surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "You're right. Marriage shouldn't feel like a prison. So let's cancel it." His smile froze. "Patricia, come on, we're just joking." "I'm not." I slipped off my watch, the one he'd given me for our 3-year anniversary, and placed it gently on the table. I told them I was done being the punchline to jokes I was never in, done watching my partner stay silent while others disrespected me. I picked up my jacket and said, "Consider this your escape." Then I walked out. Behind me, someone called my name. I didn't turn around. For the first time in years, I felt light. I didn't answer a single call that night. By the time I got home, my phone was vibrating nonstop on the kitchen counter, lighting up the dark apartment with his name over and over again. I watched it for a moment, not with anger, but with something closer to exhaustion. The kind that settles into your bones after years of explaining yourself, softening your reactions, convincing yourself that love means endurance. I muted the phone, took off my shoes, and sat on the edge of my bed, fully dressed, staring at the wall until the silence felt real. By midnight, there were more than 20 missed calls. Voicemails, too. I didn't listen. I already knew the rhythm of his apologies, confused first, then defensive, then wounded. He would say he hadn't meant it like that it was just his friends being dramatic, that I was taking things too personally. I'd heard all of it before, just never all at once. The next morning there was knocking. Not gentle knocking, the kind that assumes you owe someone access simply because they want it. I looked through the peephole and saw him standing there in yesterday's clothes, eyes red, jaw tight. He knocked again. Patricia, I know you're in there. Open the door. We need to talk like adults. I didn't open it. I texted instead. I am being an adult who doesn't want to talk right now. Please leave. Another knock, louder. His voice rose just enough that I worried the neighbors could hear. I stayed silent until the knocking stopped. Only then did I breathe again. By Monday morning, the phone rang with a number I recognized immediately. His mother. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. I don't know what you think you're doing, she said sharply. But you embarrassed my son in front of everyone. You need to apologize and fix this. I stood in my kitchen, coffee going cold in my hands, and finally said the words I'd been holding back for years. Your son laughed at the idea of leaving me at our own engagement party. He didn't defend me once. I don't owe him an apology. There was a scoff on the other end. You're being oversensitive. Men joke like that. You wouldn't understand because you're a woman. Something hardened in me then. I understand that my partner should have my back in public. He didn't. That's not a joke. That's a character reveal. She went on about how I was throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me, how I'd never find someone like her son again. I told her I was counting on it and ended the call before my voice could shake. By Tuesday, the story had already been written for me, and I wasn't the author. Screenshots started coming in from mutual friends, posts implying I was emotionally unstable, comments about me being controlling, insecure, intimidated by successful men. Apparently calmly standing up, saying less than 30 words and walking out had been translated into emotional abuse. It was surreal watching strangers dissect my character like it was a group project. What hurt most wasn't the lies themselves, but how quickly they stuck. People love a simple villain, and I fit neatly into the role once I refused to stay quiet. That night his father called. His voice was steady, hesitant, in a way that told me this wasn't easy for him. I'm not calling to yell, he said. I saw what's being said online. I want to hear your side. So I told him everything. The jokes, the silence, the way his son never once corrected anyone when they diminished me. The engagement party being the moment I finally stopped pretending it didn't hurt. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I didn't know about all of that. He told us you snapped out of nowhere. I'm sure he did. For what it's worth, he added, I understand why you left, and I'm sorry. That call didn't fix anything, but it grounded me. It reminded me that reality still existed outside the noise. Wednesday morning, a new message came in from an unknown number. We need to clear the air. You completely overreacted and ruined his party. The least you can do is apologize publicly so people stop thinking we did something wrong. This is affecting my reputation too. I read it twice. Then I replied carefully, deliberately. Your reputation should be affected. You publicly mock someone at their own engagement party and encourage my fiancé to leave me. That's not humor. That's cruelty with an audience. I was blocked immediately. That was the moment I realized something important. This wasn't about reconciliation anymore. It was about control of the story of perception of who got to define what had happened. And for the first time, I wasn't interested in keeping the peace. I was interested in the truth. By Thursday, the tone shifted. Up until then, the accusations had been vague, heavy on implication, light on detail. But now the posts were sharper, more confident, like a group that had finally agreed on a script and decided to perform it loudly. Screenshots of old messages were circulating, cropped just enough to suggest a pattern: me expressing frustration, me asking for boundaries, me saying I felt disrespected. Context removed, intent rewritten. Suddenly those moments became proof that I had always been controlling, always jealous, always the problem. I recognized the strategy even before it was fully formed. If you repeat something enough times, people stop asking whether it's true. What I hadn't expected was the call from one of my clients. He sounded uncomfortable, like he was stepping into a conversation he hadn't planned to have. Hey, Patricia, he said. I just wanted to check in. I saw some things online. I know it's personal, but I wanted to hear it from you. I explained as calmly as I could. Not defensively, just facts. He listened, told me he appreciated my honesty, said it didn't change how he saw my work. After we hung up, I sat in my truck for a long time, hands on the steering wheel, feeling the weight of what almost happened. The fact that my private life had even brushed up against my professional reputation made something in me snap into focus. This wasn't just emotional fallout anymore. This was damage. That afternoon, I made an appointment with an attorney. I brought everything. Screenshots, dates, posts, messages. I laid them out across the desk like pieces of a puzzle that finally made sense when you stepped back. The lawyer flipped through them, slowly nodding. They're making claims that are demonstrably false, she said, And those claims are affecting your business. You have a case. Hearing that didn't make me feel vindicated. It made me feel tired. Because winning wasn't what I wanted. I just wanted it to stop. That night, while organizing old files on my phone, I stumbled across something I hadn't thought about in days. Years of text messages between me and my fiancé, late-night conversations after he came home from outings with his friends, vents, and confessions he'd trusted me with. Messages where he complained about their behavior, their comments, their competitiveness. Messages where he'd agreed they were shallow, said he felt drained by them, promised he'd say something next time. Next time never came. I scrolled slowly, my thumb. Heavy. Every excuse I'd made for him lined up neatly in gray bubbles on my screen. I realized then that I wasn't holding secrets, I was holding evidence. The question wasn't whether I could use it. The question was whether I was willing to. By Friday morning, the posts had escalated again. Now there were stories about me being emotionally unsafe, about how my silence was proof of guilt. One caption read, "When someone shows you who they really are, believe them." I laughed out loud at that. Not because it was funny, but because the irony was unbearable. I opened a new message and added everyone to it. Him, his closest friends, the ones who'd been loudest online. My fingers hovered over the screen for a moment. 4 years of restraint pressed against one decision. Then I hit send. Hi everyone. Since you've decided to publicly attack my character, I thought you might want to see what your best friend actually thinks of you. I attached the screenshots, dozens of them, years worth. Him calling the ringleader exhausting and desperate for attention. Him saying another friend peaked in college and had been unbearable ever since. Him mocking their relationship advice as rich coming from people who couldn't keep one together. Him agreeing with me that they were superficial, saying he only stayed close out of history, not respect. The chat went quiet for less than a minute. Then it exploded. Messages flooded in faster than I could read them. Accusations, shock, betrayal. Screenshots of their own, now turned inward. Within hours, the ringleader had posted publicly calling him two-faced, manipulative fake. Years of friendship unraveled in real time. My phone rang 17 times. I didn't answer. The voicemails shifted from sobbing apologies to screaming rage to legal threats. One message ended with, "You've destroyed my friendships. I hope you're happy." I deleted them all without listening again. For the first time since the party, the narrative wasn't mine to defend. The truth was doing the work on its own. And I knew then that there was no going back. The collapse was fast and messy, the kind of implosion that happens when a structure was never as solid as it pretended to be. By the weekend, the same accounts that had been posting about toxic behavior and emotional safety were suddenly silent or frantically rewriting their own timelines. Comments were being deleted, captions edited, stories disappeared without explanation. It didn't matter. Screenshots live forever, and everyone involved knew it. He tried calling again Sunday morning. I let it ring. When I finally listened to one voicemail, just one, it was different from the others. No anger this time, just panic. "Patricia, please. You didn't have to do this. You know I didn't mean those things. They were just vents. Private. How could you share that?" I sat on my couch phone in my hand and felt something close to grief. Not for the relationship I'd already mourned that, but for the version of him I'd believed in. The one who supposedly valued honesty, who claimed to hate drama, who insisted he was stuck between loyalty and truth. Hearing him frame his own words as betrayal instead of accountability told me everything I needed to know. On Monday, I sent a single formal message. "Please return the engagement ring." The ring had cost me $8,200. I'd saved for it slowly, carefully, telling myself it symbolized the future we were building. In our state, it was considered a conditional gift. If the engagement ended, the ring legally went back to the person who bought it. It wasn't emotional, it was procedural. His reply came quickly. "Wow, you want the ring back. After everything you've done to me, consider it compensation for emotional damages." I forwarded the message to my lawyer. She sent a demand letter that afternoon. Clear language, legal citations, no room for theatrics. The ring was mine if he wasn't marrying me. That was the law. His mother called within an hour. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't ask how I was. She went straight to shouting about greed, about how I was attacking her son over jewelry, about how I was showing my true mercenary nature. I let her finish. "Ma'am," I said evenly, "your son is refusing to return $8,200 of my property. That's not mercenary. That's accountability." She accused me of cruelty, of revenge, of trying to ruin his life. I wished her a good day and ended the call. The lawyer told me later that his own attorney had advised him to stop escalating, that sharing true statements wasn't defamation, that refusing to return the ring would cost him more than it was worth. The fight drained out of him, after that, replaced by spite. 3 days later, the ring arrived in the mail, not in a box, in a padded envelope, stuffed with shredded photos of us, vacations, holidays, moments I barely recognize now. There was a note scrawled on a piece of notebook paper. I hope you choke on it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat at my kitchen table, emptied the envelope, and stared at the ring until it felt like just metal again. I sold it that week. Got back $100. Not what I paid, but enough. I donated a portion to a local trade school scholarship fund. The rest went toward the security deposit on a new apartment. A clean start felt more valuable than any symbol I'd once believed in. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. He showed up at one of my job sites the following Monday in front of my crew and a client I'd worked with for years. His face was pale eyes wild, like he'd been running on nothing but adrenaline and resentment. "We need to talk," he said loudly. "You've ruined everything. My friends hate me. My parents are disappointed. I have nothing left because of you." I set down my tools slowly. "You ruined everything when you couldn't stand up for me once in 4 years." He started crying real tears this time, said he loved me, said he'd made one mistake. 4 years of mistakes I corrected. The party was just when I stopped ignoring them. My client stepped forward, then voice firm. "You need to leave. This is a work site." He left calling me names I won't repeat, his voice cracking with every word. That was the last time I saw him. After that day at the job site, the noise finally began to fade. Not all at once. It never does. It receded in uneven waves, one loud moment, followed by days of silence, then a stray message or a half-hearted apology, drifting in from the edges of a life I was no longer part of. His friend group had imploded completely by then. The ringleader posted a long, emotional monologue about betrayal and fake friendships, carefully avoiding her own role in what started everything. 2 of the others reached out to me privately, admitting they'd gotten swept up in the drama that things went too far. I thanked them for saying it. I told them I didn't need anything else. They understood. What surprised me most was how little satisfaction I felt watching it all fall apart. There was no rush of victory, no sense of justice served, just a quiet confirmation that chaos doesn't need encouragement when it's built on dishonesty. It collapses on its own. A week later, his father called again. He apologized not just for the party, but for the years he hadn't seen. He said he'd had some hard conversations with his son and realized how often I'd been dismissed, minimized, treated as optional. He told me he was sorry I'd been made to carry that alone. I thanked him. I meant it. I held no anger toward him. Some people truly don't know what's happening until it's too late. The online posts came down gradually. First, the accusations softened, then they vanished entirely. It's hard to maintain a narrative about an abusive ex when your entire friend group has publicly turned on you and everyone knows you were trashing them in private for years. The silence that followed felt heavier than the noise ever had. I moved into my new apartment on a rainy Tuesday morning. It was smaller than the place I'd imagined sharing with him, but it was mine. I unpacked slowly, deliberately, placing things where I wanted them without compromise. No one questioning my choices. No one laughing when I asked for respect. That night, I sat on the floor with takeout and realized something else had ended quietly without me noticing the urge to defend myself. I didn't need to explain anymore. The truth was out there, but more importantly, it was settled inside me. There was one final message I hadn't expected. It came from him late at night, sent through an email account I'd forgotten existed. He wrote about regret, about loneliness, about how he'd lost everything. He said he wished he'd defended me, said he'd been afraid of rocking the boat, afraid of losing his friends, afraid of being alone. I read it once, then I archived it. Fear explains behavior. It doesn't excuse it. I didn't reply. Instead, I booked an appointment with a therapist. Not because I felt broken, but because I'd ignored my own discomfort for years, trained myself to accept disrespect in the name of love. I wanted to understand why. I wanted to do better for myself. The first thing she said to me stuck. "You didn't leave because of one joke," she said. "You left because that joke confirmed something you'd been feeling for a long time." She was right. Some nights I still replay the moment in my head, the laughter, the raised glass, the way he never looked at me. In those moments, doubt tries to creep in. Could I have handled it differently? Should I have talked to him privately? Was there a version of this that didn't end so completely? Then I remember how small I felt sitting at that table, how invisible. And the doubt fades. The quiet that followed wasn't empty, it was deliberate. For the first time in years, my life wasn't punctuated by someone else's moods, someone else's expectations, someone else's need for approval. There were no group chats buzzing with half jokes and passive insults, no mental math before speaking wondering whether I was about to be too sensitive again. Just space and time, and the unfamiliar responsibility of listening to myself. His father reached out one last time about a week later. He didn't ask for anything. He simply told me he hoped I was doing well, that he'd realized how unfairly I'd been treated, and that he was genuinely sorry. I thanked him and meant it. We ended the call on good terms, and that felt like a quiet kind of closure, not dramatic, not loud, but real. Eventually, the online noise disappeared completely. Posts were deleted, accounts went private, people moved on, as they always do when the spectacle ends. It turned out that outrage has a short shelf life when it's built on shaky ground. Once his own words came to light, there was nothing left to sustain the narrative. I didn't feel vindicated, I felt relieved. Therapy became a weekly ritual, not heavy or emotional every time. Sometimes it was just talking through patterns, learning how often I'd overridden my instincts to keep the peace. My therapist said something during our third session that I wrote down as soon as I got home. You trained yourself to accept disrespect because you loved him. Now you need to train yourself to recognize your own worth. It wasn't an accusation, it was an observation, and it fit. I started doing small things differently, saying no without explaining, leaving rooms where I felt talked over, choosing rest over obligation. None of it was dramatic. All of it mattered. My friends noticed. They didn't comment much, just showed up more. Weekly dinners replaced the old routine of watching games in silence. There was more conversation now, more honesty, less hiding behind jokes. It helped more than I expected. I'm not dating yet. I don't feel rushed. 4 years is a long time to invest in someone, and I'm letting myself feel that loss without turning it into urgency. Being alone no longer feels like a failure. It feels like clarity. Sometimes late at night, I still think about that moment at the engagement party, the laughter, the glass raised in mock temptation, the way my future unraveled in a room full of people. In those moments, a quiet voice asks whether I was too harsh, too final. Then I remember how long I stayed silent, how many times I told myself it didn't matter, how often I accepted being diminished so someone else could stay comfortable. And I know I made the right choice. There's no dramatic twist at the end of this story. No villain arrested, no public redemption arc, just a woman who finally respected